$10 at the door.
So, hey, good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
And now, live in the studio, joining us, author Armin Nazian with his new book VampCon.
Hi.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Pretty good. A little nervous over here.
Don't be.
Fine.
We're totally casual.
All right.
Everything's cool here. So this book, which was only recently released, and it has been getting a lot of attention lately. You've been doing tours and readings and whatnot. But this really is kind of like a deviation from your usual writing style. Just doing some research about you. You don't usually do vampire books, so I'm curious how you kind of got into this particular genre.
It goes back to growing up. I'm 41, so this would be back in the 80s and early 90s. I was, into a lot of things that I guess I should say white guys are into, Dungeons and Dragons, comic books, science fiction and fantasy.
Excuse me, sir, I'm a black nerd.
You can D&D with the best
trouble
one, right?
for saying.
I was going to say Obama made it cool.
Well, it's interesting if you want to come back to that later. There's I think like the whole sort of geek power thing has happened over the last 5-10 years or something.
Dare I say geek chic? Come on.
But just going back to the question, I liked all that stuff, when I decided to go into writing, I actually went to grad school just around the corner here at Emerson. Most master and fine arts programs, they focus more on literary fiction. So I was, got a grounding in that and spent several years putting together a lot of short stories that are more based on my Armenian heritage, completely different in tone and everything. Yeah, from VampCon, which is, a thriller.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about the story behind this.
It's people say like, where did the idea come from? It took a while to kind of get built together. In 2003, I had this weird. I was actually in the middle of working on the short story collection that I mentioned earlier, and every once in a while I'm writing a book, even when I was writing VampCon, I'll go on these sort of side projects. I'm like every other human being, I'm very easily distracted. So I'll start one thing and I'll be like, oh, this is getting hard. I think I'll try something, and everything new seems sort of bright and shiny and exciting. So one of my little sidetracks was this. I just written the scene. I imagined this vampire guy, and he would sort of be a blue collar character. I imagined him in a garage, and he'd get this mysterious invitation from a giant bat, and the invitation would lead to a lot of trouble, and that was sort of an initial scene. I jotted it down in a notebook, and then that was 2003, and 5 years went by, and in 2008 I actually started. I was sort of at a lull. Like, I'd finished the short story collection. I tried working on a literary novel. It really went nowhere. Like, folks who read it were basically like, no, this really just isn't happening. There isn't much going on. And I was a little depressed. And then, I don't know if you remember, 2008 was also when the economy crashed. Mm-hmm. And so I actually had less work for the first time in a long time. And my son, who was one then, was actually starting to sleep through the night too. So suddenly I had a ton of extra time. And so I started writing this, and my wife was actually like super, very encouraging, because I was, and I still sort of feel a little embarrassed. Like, I teach at Curry College in Milton, and still when I walk up to faculty members, and they might say, so what are you working on? A vampire novel. And that's why I always feel a little like, I should be working on, some story about, I don't know, somebody who works in technology and, they get cancer. But, I'm working on this fantasy thing. And so anyway, but my wife was sort of like, this like she might sell copies as opposed to I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So she was very helpful in kind of giving me a nudge. And once I started rolling on that, the first book, which is kind of different, and I just want to say thanks so much for reading it. And Max over there read it.
I read it.
Oh, thank you. You guys are awesome.
Matt,
thank you.
I did not get a copy of Max was supposed to hook me up.
Oh no! But thank you so much for reading it. But the first draft was like kind of different from what you're holding in your hands. So some of the characters are the same, and some of the general situations are the same. And then I went through a whole bunch of changes from 2008 till 2011. Then I started approaching agents. Went through that, took several months. Did not get an agent. Very difficult to get one. And eventually wound up approaching small presses. This was published by UK-based press Greyheart Press. And Tim Taylor is the publisher. He's out there and possibly listening in Bromham, in England. So if you're out there, Tim, hello.
Hey, Tim.
There might be a couple of folks in England out there.
That's awesome.
But and they took it, and we went through another set of revisions over the summer. It was very accelerated. Like I know you had some other authors here, so you know that it should take a year or two just to get a book from being accepted to actually out in the stores. And Tim turned it around in like 5 months, 6 months. So we did this very accelerated sort of final revision and had some other changes. I can tell a couple of stories about that.
Yeah.
So it started 2003, kind of really started, but then really crystallized after 2008.
That's when the magic happened.
Yeah, and now comes the hard work after the magic, which is now the promotional part, which takes up even more time than the writing in some ways. It's pretty intense.
But,
So why don't you go and tell us the premise of VampCon?
Oh, great, thanks. Actually, I wrote it down because I just can't. It was funny. If you could just hear me for 1 second, I was at Rhode Island Comic Con last weekend, and I was with another writer, and he was just so good at sort of naturally talking about a story, and I realized that I can't do that. And people say, "What's your story about?" Well, it's a vampire conspiracy thriller set in Boston. But I can give. So I went and wrote down the whole, the actual little blurb that I would have put on the back of the book.
Yeah.
With apologies to Tim, who put something different on the back. Right. So here you go. Jonathan Stoker is a reluctant vampire who wants nothing to do with the dark world that turned him. He isolates himself, sucking non-lethal quantities of blood from helpless drunks and making a marginal living. However, after he learns that someone he holds dear has been lured to the VampCon, a cutthroat vampire summit, Jonathan is forced to deal with his kind again. But Jonathan and company quickly discover that the VampCon is much more than a meeting. It's a conspiracy that holds the key to both the creation and possible extinction of all vampires. Now Jonathan has no choice but to come to terms with his own dark side while working with a small band of troublemakers to stop a nightmare from coming true. That's my non-spoilery.
That's a great. Having read the book,
Spoilers.
I'd say that's an awesome summation.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And I just throw out there, if you're writing a book, you start writing the summary almost when you start writing the book. It takes a long time to get that sounding right.
After you've written, like 100,000 words?
95,000.
95,000.
Yeah.
It's I can't imagine summing it down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like asking a musician to play like half a second of their music.
Yeah, right.
How do you sum up your entire album in like say 10 seconds?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, right.
Now, would you mind doing a reading for us?
Oh, I'd love to.
Let's hear a little
taste about what this book is all about.
And I'll just start at the beginning. I think it's
sure. It's 21 plus, and I believe